Why does Iran not attack Israel's nuclear sites in response? It's a question many have asked me, and today I'm going to answer the question. First, I have to mention that Israel and Iran don't have the same war goals. They don't operate in the same conditions. A bird has control of the skies, a fish dominates the seas. Each operates in their own domain. They have strengths and weaknesses. Israel attacked Iran's nuclear capabilities on June 13th, yes. Thinking Iran could do the same in retaliation or just to balance things out comes from a lack of understanding of asymmetry at play here. Not insulting anyone who doesn't get it. I'll be happy to explain and hear your thoughts. Asymmetry meaning that things aren't the same on both sides. For Israel, degrading Iran's nuclear capabilities would mean that Iran is vulnerable to complete national destruction, the overthrowing of their government and potentially the breakup of the Islamic Republic as we know it, balkanization, which is like when a country is broken up into a fragmented mess by an outside power that benefits from that country basically no longer existing as a unified bloc. It's an existential threat posed to Iran by Israel. But you haven't heard that in the Western legacy media. It's always Israel worried about its own existence, and the Western legacy media says that Iran's potentially the aggressor, is always, chanting death to, you get the point, right? But it's Iran actually whose existence is threatened, practically speaking, because Israel is actually capable of it, right? And Israel would love to make sure Iran can't get nukes, because in the modern age, you have to understand this, in the modern age, having a nuclear weapon protects your state from existential threat. It's the one guaranteed insurance policy. Anyone who is about to take your capital, has fully invaded, has destroyed your army, they might occupy your capital now and end your government's rule and replace it with something more preferential to the attacker, or completely balkanize your state, just fragment it and leave it to, law of the jungle style. Well, if you have a nuke and you can reliably launch that nuke, that whole threat I just described, the existential threat to your existence, it will make the attacker think twice. You basically say to your enemies, we can fight, we can squabble, we can on the border, sort of tit for tat. But if things get really hairy, if my life's on the line, right, the life of my administration, my government is on the line, then I would lob this bad boy at your capital, and it's GG for the both of us, for both our administrations. How about that? So that makes your attacker go like, oh, okay, fine, I can't actually take it that far. I can't overthrow, regime change this state because they have nukes. So Israel would want to prevent Iran from acquiring that insurance against Israel's existential threat to Iran. Whether Israel can stop them from developing a nuke is another matter, right? But let's look at the other side now. Iran's targeting of Israeli nuclear launch sites, what would that do? Attempt to neutralize Israeli nukes? Why? What would that benefit the Iranian state? How would that, especially at this moment in time, when Iran's fighting a defensive war, that's trying not to escalate, is trying to survive, is trying to have a ceasefire or peace deal so it can get on with what it was trying to do, which is survive until the Americans exit the region. How would that benefit Iran to target Israeli nuclear sites? The answer? It would not. Attempting to relieve a state of their nukes would make geostrategic sense, analytically speaking, if the attacker is confident to some degree that they could then proceed to fully occupy the defending state, overthrow their government, and replace it with something more compliant to the attacker, etc., etc. But Iran, despite the rhetoric, you hear, the state being fine with chants of, death to, death to, with the state being fine or even supporting such chants, despite that wording, the rhetoric, Iran can't actually invade. Practically, idealistically, they have a goal, okay, fine. Practically, they can't execute, right? They can't actually invade Israel and overthrow the regime in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. They can't at the moment, right? So taking out their nukes is a dead-end strategy. You take out their nuke, assuming you can somehow take out all the nukes, which, by the way, is not strategically reliable, but assuming you could, now what? You've got no advantage. That doesn't actually give you any particular advantage. But if you have capable missiles, as Iran does, you can direct them at military targets, especially ones within or nearby Israeli cities, so as to put pressure on the Tel Aviv or Jerusalem regime, so as to force them to spend expensive interceptor missiles of their own, so as to pressure the Israeli population to complain to their own government, And remember, it's sort of modeled after a democracy in the West, where the Israeli population, at least the Jewish part, have strong civil liberties. They're quite well within their rights at a state level to complain and try and get different people in power, etc., etc. So you can put pressure on the population to basically complain to their government. That is far more aligned with Iran's goal of surviving this latest round of attacks, its goal of painting itself as the victim of Israeli aggression, and its goal of waiting things out so Israel has to agree to a ceasefire, then waiting things out further so the Americans pack up and leave the Middle East entirely, which they very much want to do in order to be prepared to face off against Zhongguo, China, their great power rival. In summary, it's not aligned with Iran's strategic goals to go after the Israeli nukes. It would be aligned if there was a realistic and practical. It would be aligned if the Iranians were realistically and practically threatening the existence of the Israeli state, not just by rhetoric, but practically, as that's when nuclear weapons by Israel would become very realistic in terms of being deployed for defending the nuclear armed state against an existential threat. But that's not the current reality. So for now, the Jericho missiles that Israel straps nukes onto the tip of are safe from Iranian ordnance, though for better or worse, the same cannot be said about Israel's military or energy infrastructure throughout their country, which continue to be targeted daily by rounds upon rounds of Iranian ballistic missile volleys. For the unbiased news and analysis without the Western spin, I'm Mahfouz, and I'll see you on the next one. And sorry about the shaking, and I hope you guys appreciate the fire alarms are now off. Also, guys, I'm going to make the same request I made last video at the end of this video as well. I'm really looking to engage with my community, especially since it's grown significantly this last week and a half or so. So if you guys have questions that you want me to answer, pop them in the comment section of the videos, not directly message them to me. And if you pop them in the comment section of the video, or you're someone who sees the comment section and sees some interesting questions you want the answer to as well, give those comments a like or put your own comments there. And what I'll try to do is make time to look through my comments, find the ones that have a lot of likes on them, and if viable, if I think I am educated enough to present an explanation, I'll go ahead and make a video for you guys, and I'll thank you, the person who actually wrote the initial comment. So a great way to engage with my community there. I have a community now to engage with. It's wonderful, and I hope we can continue to learn about geopolitics together, learn how the world works together, so that we can then decide upon our place in the grand scheme of things, be that pro this, pro that, supporting this government, supporting that government, maybe trying to run for office in a specific nation ourselves, whatever your fancy. See you on the next one.